Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie, the board game buccaneer, and today I want to introduce you all to MLEM Space Agency, a brand new family push your luck board game with a small amount of area control, designed by Reiner Knizia, with artwork by Joanna Rajpeka, apologies if I've pronounced that wrong, and published by Rebel Games. This is one of those games that I saw on a shelf and knew that I just needed to add to my collection immediately. First of all, it's space. Secondly, it's cats. Thirdly, it's Reiner Knizia, and that man with 700 odd games under his belt, still going strong and designing blinders, knocking them out of the park left, right and centre. So in today's video, I want to discuss, is MLEM Space Agency another blinder, or is this one something better left in orbit? If you do enjoy this video or want to know more about this game, let me know. Hit like, drop a comment down below. Both of those things let YouTube know that people are enjoying my content and thus to promote it to more people, so it's always a huge help. Of course, if you do want to go the extra mile, I have a Patreon page and a PayPal tip jar that you can choose to support at as well. That all said, make sure you're subscribed to this channel where I'll be introducing you to all of the different games that myself and my group play and asking the question, does the game join the crew? Does it walk the plank? Is it a game worth taking on a voyage, or is it something actually worth dropping anchor for? MLEM Space Agency is a family push-your-luck game with a small amount of area control. Each turn, players will be launching their cats into space and hoping to land them on various moons and planets in order to earn victory points. I adore the artwork on this one. It uses a nice long neoprene mat, very colourful and bright, and each of the players gets one of these boards with the different cats on them, representing the different space agencies. This works for 1 to 5 players, and here I'm showing the setup for a typical 4-player game with blue, yellow, pink, and silver. There is also a green cat as well if you've got a 5th player. Setup for this game is really simple. Give each player one of the cat space agency boards with all 8 of their cat tokens. Make sure that beside the board you have both your rocket and the dice in easy reach of all players, and the mat should be laid out down the center of the board with your rocket ship marker at the bottom and the crash token set in its first position. Within easy reach of all players, you should also have the shared objective markers and this big pile here of victory cardboard, also known as victory point tokens. And I do love how every single one of these is in some way, shape or form a cat toy, all the way up to your big spikely belled jangler, to little birds, and down to your standard ball of yarn. In MLEM Space Academy, the turn structure is very straightforward. At the start of each turn, the commander chooses one of his cat astronauts to lead the expedition, placing it into the rocket in the first token slot. Then we go around the table and each player adds their own astronaut into the turn order, like so. Now we'll talk about all the different things that the different astronauts do later on in the game. I think it's worth more covering the fundamentals than talking about those bits later on. Once the rocket has been set up, it's up to our commander to take off and begin the expedition. The commander rolls your different dice and then puts them into groups of the same number or symbol. In this case, we've got 2 4s, a 3, a 1, and 2 2s. We then look at where the rocket is currently along the track and see which dice we can actually use to activate. In this case, we can activate afterburners, 1s, or 2s. We look at the dice here, and we're going to choose to activate the 2s and the 1. These have a total of 5 on them, and thus we move the marker 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 along the board. At this point, players have the option to disembark any of their astronauts off the rocket onto any moons or planets nearby. There aren't any here, so we're going to have to continue. At this point, the dice used are discarded, and the player rolls again. In this case, we've got 2 1s and a 3. That's still enough for us to be able to activate, so we're good. We activate the 2 1s, that's for a total of 2 spaces moved, and thus we go 2 spaces up the board. Now in this space we can see that astronauts can disembark onto the planet if they so choose, and we are actually going to have one of our astronauts disembark there. However, the rest of the expedition are happy to continue, so the commander takes that final dice and rolls it again. Now this time around, the symbols do not match the dice rolled. This rocket will crash, moving this back up here. Don't worry though, all of the cute cats that were on board are rescued safely back to their original space agency. And that is basically all the mechanics you need to know for the main part of the game. You're going to be moving your ship further up and up this track, pushing your luck to see how high you can get up the track to drop different cats off in different places. If you place a cat on a moon, it will just immediately score however many points that moon is worth, and you can only ever have one cat astronaut on a moon at a time. Planets, on the other hand, have point tracks next to them. Whoever has the most cat astronauts on that moon will score the gold number of points, whoever has the second most will score the silver number of points, and anyone else that has at least one cat on that planet will earn the bronze number of points. This adds a small amount of area control to the game, and it is just worth paying attention to where other people are dropping their cats to see if you can score bigger than them or actually stop them scoring some of the higher point values. Should the rocket ever pass beyond the 25th space, it moves into deep space. At that point, any cats still on the rocket immediately disembark, or 7 victory points if they are the first cat to reach this destination, or 5 victory points for each one thereafter. So there is a certain amount of points that can be gained just from reaching the end of the track. Then at the top of the board here, we have the bonus tokens. These are a special amount of victory points given to someone if they happen to achieve an objective first. So for example here, it's 5 victory points for the first person to get 2 cats into deep space. 5 victory points for the first player to get 1 cat on 4 individual planets, 5 victory points for someone who gets 4 cats on different moons, and 5 victory points to the first person who gets 3 cats on the same planet. So it's probably worth spending a few brief moments to talk about the different types of cat astronaut at your disposal, because you've probably already noticed that they have different symbols on them that mean different things throughout the game. For example, these 3 here will score double victory points if they meet their condition. This one will score double victory points if he makes it all the way into deep space. That means if he's the first cat to make it into deep space, that's a whopping 14 victory points, or even 10 victory points if he's not the first. This one will score double points for any moon that he lands on, and if you control a planet at the end of the game, this one will score you double victory points if he's on that planet. Up here we have a parachute. This particular cat means that if your spaceship crashes and you are within reach of a planet or a moon, he can still disembark, basically parachuting down to the surface in order to score some extra points. This one provides an additional dice on the ship, meaning if this astronaut is on board the ship, you always have access to a 1, as if you had rolled a 1 on the dice, which can be make or break. It only gets used once though, after which you'll turn it face down. This particular one can disembark as if he were on the space above or below where you've landed, so if you're just shy of a planet, he can still jump out and make it down to safety. I like to assume he's got some kind of kitty jetpack. This one here means you start a little bit further up the track. When we were looking at the board earlier, you may have spotted this symbol on it. It's on space number 3, and it basically means that the rocket starts from space number 3. Finally, we have this one down here. This is the mean kitty. Basically, when this guy jumps ship, he takes one of the dice with him, meaning it's a little bit trickier for everyone else to push further up the track. And if that's all I had to say about MLEM Space Agency, I would rate this as a fairly novel introductory board game. The core mechanics are fairly simple. That push your luck of how you're moving up the track is pretty straightforward to grasp, and once players have grabbed these nice chunky dice and rolled them a few times, it becomes very clear and simple to understand how this works. You're just trying to get your astronauts to moons and planets, or maybe into deep space, to score some points, right? Very simple core, with just enough of a thinky twist around it to keep players engaged and add a bit of, well, thought to proceedings. Which astronaut do I want to put on the rocket ship this time? Where do I ideally want him to end up? Looks like I'm going to fall a little bit short of that. Do I push my luck to try and get that extra distance, or do I just play it safe and give up here? Remember, if the ship crashes, your astronauts do come back to your board, so you're never left feeling like, oh, darn, I really wasted that one. There's always a chance for another go, and if that's all MLEM Space Agency was, it would still be a solid game. Fortunately, there's even more packed into this box. You see, in addition to the core game itself, MLEM Space Agency also comes with not one, not two, but 3 expansions that you can spice up gameplay with. It is recommended in the rulebook that the first game you play be with just the core set, and the expansions can be used either individually or you can stack them all together if you wanted. Having all 3 expansions and the base game isn't actually quite as complex as it may initially sound. The core mechanics of the game and the additional rules of the expansions are slight enough that it doesn't become too heavy by having all 3 in play. That said, I do have my own preferences between them, but let's talk about what they are first. The first of these 3 expansions is the Secret Mission expansion. Each player is dealt 4 of these secret mission tiles face down. They look at them, choose 3 that they want to keep, and discard the 4th one. These are very straightforward and simple. Land a cat on this particular planet or this particular moon. It's literally that simple, and if you manage one of those objectives, you score 2 points. If you manage 2 of them, you score 5 points, and if you manage all 3 of them, you score the full 10 points. It doesn't add that much, but it does give you just one extra step to think about. I may not have wanted this particular moon, but darn it, now that I get a bunch of points for landing a single cat there, I really may as well. The second expansion is the Exploration expansion, which adds all of these little lozenges to the game board. 5 of these are chosen at random, they flip face up, and you put them on the number shown, in this case, tile number 9. Whenever the ship lands on one of these, you immediately score its bonus. Some of them, like this blue one here, this adds a dice back into the commander's dice pool, which means you might be able to push your luck a little bit further. The green ones warp you 4 spaces further up the board, so if I'd landed here, I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, and instead stop on number 11. If I'd landed on this one, I'd score a bonus victory point, and up here we even have one that gives us 2 victory points. The second the ship lands on these, the commander takes the token, and then another one is added back to the board. The third and probably most complex of the expansions is the UFO expansion, which adds this little kitty UFO to the board. Each turn, the commander will flip over the top tile of this little UFO stack, move the ship the number of spaces shown down the board. This bit here tells you how many dice you're allowed to roll that turn as a maximum, so rather than the usual 6 dice, this turn the commander can only roll 5, but he does always have access to a 1 and a 4. This can be massively beneficial, or it can be a huge hindrance. If at any point the commander actually lands the rocket on top of the UFO, he immediately takes one of these UFO tiles and adds it to his point score. Some of these are worth 1 point, others worth as many as 4 or even 5 points. They're also a limited stock, which means once they're gone, they're gone. Now there is technically a 4th expansion for MLEM, Blip, Cosmic Pioneers. This doesn't come in the box as standard, but was given to me as a promo, so I'm not entirely certain on the availability of this, but let's talk about it anyway. Essentially, all Blip Cosmic Pioneers does is adds 5 of these 6 tokens to the different planets along the board, and they have different effects when they're first revealed. The catnip, for example, when it's revealed, all cats still on the rocket must disembark onto that same spot, because you know catnip. The second one is the dog astronaut. This is essentially just a neutral astronaut that's already on the planet, meaning you're going to need to put at least 2 cats on there to claim majority. The abandoned dog rocket allows you to launch off the planet and claim one of the unclaimed moons, if you'd prefer. The little puppy astronaut gives you an additional 0.5 to your astronauts on a planet, meaning if you are tied with someone, the little dog astronaut breaks the tie. The dog house gives you an additional victory point for each cat that is on that planet, and the dog alien, well, that scares your cats off. The moment they've disembarked, they spot the dog alien and they run hissing with their tail between their legs back onto the rocket. And ultimately for me, this has been nice. It's enjoyable. It's a little bit of extra that you can mix into an already versatile bag. Is it going to be necessary? Should you spend more just to get this? That's going to be very up to you. Your mileage will vary. For me, I'm glad I got it, but I'm not sure I'd pony up extra just to make sure I had this for completionist's sake. I'm also more of a cat person than a dog person, so, well, make of that as you will. Personally, I quite like the UFO one. It adds that nice little bit of reward if you land on the UFO with a couple of random victory points given to you, but it adds a nice little extra thinky layer. The fact that it may confiscate some of your dice when you're the commander, or give you special bonuses, adds that little bit of extra thinkiness, that little tiny bit of extra crunch to get you to try and push your luck a little bit further up the board. The secret mission expansion is also so simple that I kind of wonder why it wasn't just part of the main game. But I do get it. Playing with it and without it does have its advantages and disadvantages. For me, I quite like the idea that actually I could score some more points if I go to this place that I wasn't initially intending to go to. I like something that mixes up my gameplay and means I can't just unbox the same game and play the same strategy time and time again. The exploration tokens for me, those were a little bit random. Because of the push your luck nature of this game, part of me felt like it just got a little bit too chaotic sometimes, like landing on one of the little wormholes that jettisons you forwards into something completely unanticipated. Sometimes those little bonus victory points just on luck of the dice. It does add a little bit of extra thought, but of the three, it's probably the weaker. I do enjoy playing with all three though. And it's at this point in the video that I ask the question, does MLEM Space Agency join our crew, or do we make it walk the plank? And this one? This is absolutely joining the crew. If it weren't for the fact that it's Space, Cats, and Reiner Knizia, there's also the fact that it's just a really solid introductory game. For new players, the core mechanics are very straightforward, and you can teach this really quickly, really easily, even to younger children, or people and friends and family that may just not be that into board games. Then if they enjoy it, you can start sprinkling in those additional expansions on top to add that little bit more thought to the game, and just get people thinking a bit harder about what they want to do in their turns. In addition to that, I just think that as an actual board game, it's fairly lightweight, it's easy to get to a table quickly and easily, and it's just enough chaotic fun whilst still having that little bit of crunch and thought to it that even seasoned board gamers are going to enjoy this for a good 30 to 40 minutes while they roll some dice, crash some ships, and try to get some cats into space. So for me, that's kind of it. Space, cats, Reiner Knizia, and it's darn good fun to boot. That's a win. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching this one right the way through to the end. As usual, if you've enjoyed it, please do hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already and want to see more content like this, and drop a comment down below letting me know what you think about MLEM Space Agency. Finally, if you do want to go the extra mile to support content like this, head across to my Patreon page or my PayPal tip jar where you can donate a small amount of money just to help keep me going. Thanks for watching, folks, and I really hope you enjoy this one. It surprised me, and I really think it will surprise you too.